Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar from the Hutt Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'm delighted on this absolutely stunning Hutt Valley Day to welcome Sarah Wilson from Sarah Wilson Recruitment. And Sarah today is going to talk about a really important subject for all of us employers, and it's about preparing yourself as an employer for successful recruitment strategies. So Sarah, welcome. Great to have you here. So much looking forward to this. I've got a couple of roles going on at the moment, so Excellent. Maybe I should have thought about this earlier, but I'm sure our listeners will certainly enjoy hearing from your experience and expertise today. So hand over to you.
Thank you, Patrick. So I'm Sarah Wilson, and I've been running my own recruitment business now for the last 6 years. And prior to that, I worked for different businesses for probably 16 years before that. Every job I've had, I've worked for owner-operators. So I certainly understand, and now I'm running my own business, the cost of recruitment or the cost of business. So every time, every hour that a manager spends on anything needs to be accounted for, and everything you do needs to be done as efficiently as possible. So with that in mind, I wanted to cover off the beginning of the recruitment process because it's often overlooked, and it's often what can lead to a process taking too long and becoming too time consuming and therefore too costly. So some people assume that finding the right person is just putting an ad up on Seek and then screening. And then
maybe
yeah, and then we'll just pop the magical person. And sometimes that happens. But it's a really important part of the process to take a moment before you start and really think about what it is that you need. So the first step is assessing what you and your business need, like what the business really needs. So every staff member is a cost, and the time involved in recruitment and advertising is a cost. So just as you would any other part of your business, take the time to manage it efficiently and plan. So usually when you are recruiting, you're either replacing someone or it's due to growth. Both require the same level of consideration and consultation before starting this process. I still hear stories of people who've been recruiting for 8 months and not found someone. That's not because the person isn't out there. It's because they've either haven't got a clear idea of what they're recruiting for, or they keep changing their minds. So you're getting that clarity from the very, very beginning is absolutely essential. So first thing we need to do is take the time to assess what you really need rather than just replacing like with like. You know, if there's been a high turnover in that role, there's probably a really good reason for it. Or do you actually need a straight replacement for that person? Sometimes it might be that there is another way or another role that might be better to backfill. The other thing is you also want to make sure that this new hire adds value to the business and comes in and makes it better rather than just doing the same thing. So it's a good opportunity. You sit down as a management team, or if it's just you and one other person, whatever the team might look like, and just nut this out. So, for example, is there scope maybe to improve existing processes and systems? Is there some sort of efficiency that might change what this job looks like? Where are the bottlenecks already? Are there issues sort of a bit further down the food chain or at another point in the business? And it might be worthwhile looking at that rather than just hiring a straight replacement or the obvious, which might be a salesperson or customer services.
Do you have I'm going to quickly interrupt there because I've got a bit of a question which partly relates to our situation at the moment about recruiting versus outsourcing. And you know, what's your views on those two things in terms of, because much of what you've talked about in terms of that early process can lead to different decisions about recruitment in different ways, and outsourcing is about recruiting somebody else to do it rather than getting somebody internally to do it, obviously.
Absolutely. And I think that's where outsourcing comes in. So a big part of what I do is the brief, and we'll sit down and I ask a lot of questions, and often with these questions the response is, Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. Oh, well, that's a good idea. And we end up getting a whiteboard out. And what I do isn't human resources. But because I know the businesses I work with, I can look at it objectively and say, what about here or there? And it's a fresh set of eyes that you might not get, because normally you're really busy and you head down and you're just doing it. But someone coming in can shed a whole new light on, on the process.
Great advice. Sorry, carry on.
No, that's good. Good question. The other thing to consider too when you're recruiting is there someone else who could step up? You know, if you've had someone resign here and you've got other people down here, there might be someone who's ready and willing and really keen to step up into a role. They might need a bit of training, but you could backfill their role. And not often, but sometimes it's easy to forget this. You know, again, you're busy doing it. And a fresh set of eyes might say, you know, what about so-and-so here? You know, they know the product, they know the business, they've been there for 10 years, they're probably ready for a new challenge.
Yeah.
And nothing frustrates people more than being overlooked for an opportunity. And again, what I've done in the past is I've managed those internal applicants as well, because a very common refrain is, oh, I was overlooked, you know, someone decided that I couldn't do it and that's it. They always think I'm not ready. But if you have someone who's got an objective point of view, not only can they be given proper feedback, as in, look, you're really strong in here, but you still need to learn a bit here.
Yeah.
And that may mean that they're still able to be promoted. They just need a bit of training or guidance. Yeah. But it makes them feel valued because they've been given a fair shot.
And certainly from an internal perspective, lots of those things can be really good for both the employer and the employee at the end of the day.
And if nothing else, everyone gets good feedback. Yeah. You know, it's good constructive feedback.
Yeah, fantastic.
And also too, if I'm the one saying no, it's better than a manager saying no, because this is what I do all day, every day, is say, look, you haven't been successful because of this. Yeah. And once you've done this, maybe you'll be ready for the next step.
Cool.
So they're all things to think about. The other thing is, what level of skill do you really need? A lot of people are really keen on hiring a junior, often because it's cheap. And I say, let's bring a junior in and we'll train them up. We need more young people. And that's excellent. I'm a big fan of that. But if you don't have the resources to train them and you really can't do it, you're doomed to fail. So before you get excited about bringing in a junior, really think about, can your team support them? Can they train them? Or are you just going to frustrate everyone and spend 12 months training a young kid who's going to go because it's all too much? The other thing you can consider too is, say, for example, if you lose an account manager, do you need another account manager? What if you brought in a sales support person that would free the account managers up? And again, it's not as big an expense. So it's really taking the time to think about what you need before you go out and start
looking very holistically as well. I'm hearing about what you do and how you do it and what your options are.
It's really important. The other one that I've been quite passionate about for the last 20 years is when I hear people say must have industry experience. And I've quite rudely called that laziness in the past, but it's just a tendency that people have to think if people know half of what we need, then they'll adjust quicker and they'll be more successful. But it's not often the case, because we've got a small pool in New Zealand of people anyway. And the minute you say you must have industry experience, the pool's smaller. So, and you want the best. Yeah. And you might get someone with industry experience that is the best, and that's a win. But you might also miss out on some really good people.
Yeah. Are you likely to pay more for that person with industry experience, or therefore is there a cost benefit in looking for somebody else that might bring different ideas and different skill sets?
Good question. Sometimes you might, because if they're coming particularly from a competitor, they will want more. And it depends. Well, it depends what level they're sitting at first, and also too, they know their value. So they come in with industry experience. So in theory, they should be quicker to get up to speed. But the downside of that can be preconceived ideas it can be having entrenched ideas, as in, this is how I do it. This is how we've always done it. And so they may be not as malleable as someone who just comes in with a good attitude and
great advice.
an aptitude. Actually, that's one business I do work with. They focus on attitude and aptitude. And sometimes you need technical skills, you need a qualification. But this business, that's what they look for. It's all about the attitude and aptitude. And their success rate is fantastic. The longevity of their team, their progression within the business, because that's what they focus on. They recruit with an open mind. And they look for the spark.
Certainly, even in the student work that we do here at the Chamber, a lot of the employers that we talk to talk about attitude. And they talk about being able to train people. You've obviously talked about bringing in a junior has its can have its benefits, and there are some pitfalls with that. But certainly, all of the employers that we talk to talk about attitude as the key ingredient for a successful person to bring into a business.
And also there's the other end of the scale, which is your more mature applicants who are often overlooked and really given a bit of a raw deal. A lot of them bring huge amounts of skill and life experience and a great work ethic. It's very, very rare you see someone over 55, crying in the toilet because they've just split up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. They're there to work. They know how to work. And they are often overlooked.
Well, there's a lot of talk at the moment about the ageing population in New Zealand and the impact of that from a health perspective, but from an employment perspective, we also have an ageing population. And actually, as you say, lots of old people have lots of experience that can bring a lot to a business at the end of the day.
They can. And it's like that when people say, oh no, they're overqualified. I mean, for God's sake, you're getting more than you've asked for. This is a bonus, This is fantastic. So there's a lot, but again, it's the attitude and aptitude. And if someone brings a real spark to an interview, why wouldn't you?
Good.
So the next thing is the job description. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about this because it's a separate conversation in itself. But what I will say is have one ready before you start. Basically, what do they need to do and how will you measure? They're the fundamentals. One thing I would say with the job description is keep it concise and tangible. Nothing puts someone off more than having every single possible task listed with the star, and you've got a 5-page job description. It looks insurmountable, overwhelming, and it looks like that's how you're going to be managed. So beware of the waffly JD.
Is there another side to that though, where you don't list the tasks that are required, that somebody doesn't get a real good understanding of what's required? Is that so? Where's the balance, I guess?
No, look, absolutely. You've got to give it an overview of what the job does. And I think a 2-page job interview, job description is all you need. You want the bulk of what they're doing, not the minutiae. Not every single, you may be printing documents.
And there's always any other task required by your manager.
As required.
I always talk about that with my staff.
I think every single employer. And it's interesting, that didn't even used to be a thing 15 years ago on a job description or contract. But now people are so, we need to cover every possible scenario in the paperwork. So we've got a job description, and then we go back to assessing needs and wants. So first of all, what skills and experience, what's essential? Now, what are the things you must have for this job? So that's where you start. Then what's preferable? And again, this is where there's a bit of scope to move. You might have interviewed the perfect person, but maybe they don't have a great degree of competency in Excel. Can that be taught? Yes. So that's preferable. Not essential.
Right. Good.
Good. What general qualities would you like? Now, obviously, you can't put this in a job ad, well, you can in a very vague sort of way. But for example, if it's a salesperson, do I need to be tenacious? If it's a really stressful, deadline-driven environment, do they need resilience? Do they need a good EQ as well as an IQ? Don't dress up what your team environment is like. If it's stressful and busy and frantic and noisy, don't hire an introvert who you know is going to.
And how upfront during the interview process? I know we're talking about JDs right now, but how upfront in the interview process would you be in that regard in terms of the, the busy role? Best about that during the interview process.
I think so. You don't want to paint too grim a picture, but you don't want to paint too rosy a picture. Otherwise, you're setting everyone up to fail. They start the job, and it's not what they expected. This is another process as well. I'm a big fan of bringing people into the environment maybe for an hour, so they see the team. They get the vibe, and they can soak it up for themselves. But if it is really intense, tell them. Some people thrive on that, but that's the person you want.
I think being upfront about those things is really important. A useful thing.
And it's something I always, when I interview people, prepare them for. And if it's not what they want, it's not right. So we've got skills, we assess the needs and what we want. And there's also the environment. If it's a factory environment, screen them for that as well. If they're going to be working in Tawa or Linden and there isn't a shop for 50 paces or 50 miles, tell them, because some people that's really important. Some people don't care. But all that stuff is important.
Good.
Reporting lines. Who are they going to be reporting to? Who are the key relationships? What are their personalities? Again, just making sure they know the lay of the land. And again, be honest. If someone is really pedantic, let them know. If someone can be a bit bad-tempered after 3, let them know. Do you know what I mean?
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about me if I don't get my chocolate really. So all that stuff's really important. Now, salary is really important. When people say money doesn't matter, it's not true. People work for money. So be clear from the beginning what the business can afford. If you have a bonus scheme, have it planned out. Don't be interviewing someone and saying, we're cobbling one together. It's not a good look. Have it all sorted. Know what your range is. Know where you want to be. Think about parity with the rest of the team. And if market rates are, 75,000 for a role and you've got your team at 60, that needs to be addressed very quickly. So you might be losing, on the verge of losing a whole lot of other people, as well as struggling to retain or attract more people. Job titles. I know, it just gets more and more interesting. So there is a school of thought that these don't matter. But the people who say this are like the people who say money doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them because they're at the top of the heap. When you are working your way up, it's important. It's really important if you're customer services, production coordinator, production manager. It matters. It matters from a point of view in that you want to reflect what the person does, but also you've got to think about who you want to attract. So think about the title. I've often changed titles on an ad with someone's permission because I don't think it reflects what the job does. So does
that work both ways, though, in terms of, should you, as part of this process, should you be looking at the job title as part of building the JD and the decision making that you're going through?
Absolutely. And because titles have evolved as well. So it used to be completely acceptable to advertise for a sales representative. That kind of has negative connotations now. Whereas account manager is different. Cool. So it's
good
thinking
advice.
about what the person does as well as who you want to attract. Again.
No, that's true too. Good.
So yes. So the bottom line is be prepared. Be a Boy Scout, Girl Guide. Have everything ready. Have your job description. Have your handbooks. If there are health and safety handbooks or anything like that, make sure they're up to date. With your contracts, it's really important to have them ready. Please always check them before you send them out. I can't tell you how many contracts I've checked before sending, and they've had someone else's name in them or address details, and it's easy to do. So make sure your contracts are up to date. Make sure they're clean. Just so you're ready to go. So if you interview someone and they're the right one, you do your due diligence, and that's another conversation. But it just means you're good to go.
Good.
Yeah, so that's the beginning of the process, and then you can advertise.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, that's been really enlightening, both at a kind of personal and professional level,
Yeah.
because as I said at the start, we're going through
Yes.
some processes
Yeah.
at the moment. It's possible that I haven't followed all of that advice, but certainly we've been looking at some of those things. But this has been really good for us to kind of reflect as we're going through these processes on what we should be doing.
Yes.
As employers, it's a vital part of your recruitment process, and so it is really important. And it's been really great advice. So thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to us, and I'm sure we'll look forward to the next stage in the process and the webinar sometime soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.